Hello, my name is Karina and I'm going to start a Stitch With Me project. I'm doing the Granddaddy Death by Cross Stitch. And I've done cross stitch for quite a while. I like actually traditional samplers, which have lots of different kind of stitches. This is actually, for being so detailed and huge, it's actually really extremely simple. It's just straight cross stitch and some back stitch type areas, and very few of those, it looks like. So the pattern is just little blocks. Traditionally, it's done all black, and that's what I'm going to do. The reason I'm doing this is basically to fill some time. I have a son. I'm a single parent. I have a son who is going to college. Very exciting. He has autism. It's been quite a challenge getting him to the point where he can go to college. Additionally, I've been taking care of my parents. My mother passed away from lung cancer in January, and my father in March was diagnosed with advanced dementia, and he's now in a memory care center, which is awesome. But now I'm going to have all this extra time, and so I'm going to be doing this. So the size on this is 363 by 447, which means I'm going to have to do a little math because I don't know, I'm crazy. And this is huge. It's absolutely gigantic. I have this piece of fabric that is 18 point. That means that there are, which you can see the weave, there's 18 stitches per inch. So 18 goes into 360 about 20 times. And so that would be maybe it's 20 by 30 with this. So this is I'm just actually doing the very, very beginning work. So it would be about 20. This is a pretty big piece of fabric here. And I do have some really basic equipment, but 20 by 30, so a little bit bigger than that. So this is 28, and that is okay. So this is about 10 inches bigger each way from how it's going to end up being. It's actually doubled over. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut this in half. When I do stitching, you know that a lot of people use hoops and other ways to stretch the fabric. I don't. Yes, these are like the most basic scissors you've ever seen in your life, but they work. I don't, never have. I find them very cumbersome, so I'm very careful with my stitches to make sure that I've got a consistent tension. The way I'm doing this actually is easier than I thought. I thought it was going to be quite the pain to try to find the midpoint in this piece of fabric. So this will probably be shorter than I thought it was going to be. Because I really am just starting this. Maybe I'll start doing stitches. I don't know. This is just a prep work. A lot of people do guidelines. They actually sew lines on here. I'm sure you know if you've seen these type of videos before. Know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't use those either. I actually count. I do have sort of a strange little issue with my eyesight, that I can't see straight lines, and yet I do cross stitch, which is all straight lines and counting. And that's part of the thing. It's incredibly distracting to me to do that. So it's sort of a meditative process. Okay, yeah, well, there's the midpoint then, right there. So let's look at this pattern and find the midpoint in the pattern. Again, it's actually fairly simple. So what we're looking for, I'm sure you've seen this before if you've done any cross stitch. Get this a little closer. The pattern itself is just a bunch of little dots. You can see right here. They have these ones that are filled in are the ones where you do the cross stitch with CX, and these little lines right here are back stitching. Basically, you do straight line work. And what I'm looking for is this little triangle thing, which you can't see in the camera because that's great. There we go. This little triangle means that it's a midpoint line of the pattern, and I'm looking for one of the pages that has both of them on it, this side, and that means it's the middle of the pattern, and that's where I'll start stitching. There's another one. There we go. I know the setup is a little weird and I'm not used to it, and I will work that out and get a better one. So basically the bottom corner of this part of the pattern, that is the middle of the stitching, so I can start right there and I know I'll be in the middle. When you take a pattern like this and you see these grayed out squares, it means that it's actually on both sides, next to another. So you can see right here how these stitches here are these stitches here, so that you can line up and make sure that you're on the correct spot. I know this is really basic 101, but it's helpful. Another thing that I do a lot, because this is just paper, is I'll use packing tape, regular old packing tape. I think I've got some right here. Yeah, see, regular old packing tape, and tape on top of this, and basically like a self-lamination type of thing. Again, traditionally these are done in black, and I've seen a lot of people try this pattern and they actually colorize it themselves, but I'm not going to mess with that because then I would have to basically concentrate too much. And again, this is sort of my attempt to meditate. So this is the thread, basic thread, and I just put the scissors somewhere. Probably put them away. I did. I put them away. When you are doing this, you should basically take a piece of thread that's about the length of your arm, so twice as long from your hand to your elbow. Just measure it out, snip it off. And then the thread itself is 6 strands. And to do this, I'm going to do, should I do 2 or should I do 3? I think I'll do 2. A lot of times I try to double, or not double, it's 50% more. And because it just makes the pattern more bold. But this weave here is so tiny that I think that will drive me crazy. I think it will be thick and lumpy on top of the fabric. It's not a very good way of starting. So you basically just pull 2 pieces of thread and slowly pull it apart. You pull down to try to get the because it's been spun together, and you're trying to get the tendency for the thread to spin out of it. So you just pull it out and pull and get these 2 pieces of thread separated in the floss. And again, same thing. Try to pull out as much of that tendency to spin as you possibly can. Now my needles, again, are basic because that's just what I like. But they're also very small, and that's good for this type of fabric because it is very small. These are basic quilting needles. They're not embroidery needles. They're very small. They have a very small head on them. The easiest way to thread a needle, works all the time, is you hold the needle horizontally in your dominant hand. And then it's black thread, so make it easier to see. You drape the thread over the needle like this, then grab it down to pull it so it's taut and tight. And you use your thumb and your index finger to pinch the thread. And it's not like so tight like that, but it's not loose either. You're holding it in place. So you pinch the thread slightly, pull the needle out. So you're still pinching the thread. There it is. And you place the head, the eye of the needle, right over the thread that you've got pinched between your fingers, like that. And then you sort of wiggle it back and forth and push the needle on. Bingo. Any thread you can use to do that. And as long as the eye of the needle is wide enough, and you're not, like, for instance, if I was trying to push yarn through here, it would not work. Other than that, that works every time. So I guess I'm going to start. Again, this spot here, right there, is the exact middle of this piece. And because this was folded and I haven't ironed it yet, haven't done anything, then I know for sure that is the middle of this piece of fabric. So we'll go like that. Because these are so tiny, they're actually, the squares that are on this thread in the weave is actually smaller than this. So it's not going to look just like that. It'll be like probably this size will probably end up being an area like that. So I'll just start. Now, again, a lot of people use hoops or something like that so that it would control the amount of area that you're dealing with as far as this fabric goes, but that's not what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start here. So I hold the fabric in one side. I will eventually do a quick baste around the side of all these this fabric so that it doesn't unravel, but it's brand new, it's really stiff, it's not going to be a problem yet. Go underneath with a needle, and it's hard because this fabric is such a large piece of fabric. Basically just poke it through from underneath, make sure it goes into, can you see that at all? Really hard to see. Make sure you go through one of the holes. When you do cross stitch, always make sure that the stitches go in one direction. You go up one and then diagonally across one of these squares, underneath, straight down, and then poke back up and then go the opposite diagonal way. That's how you make a cross stitch. I always go from the bottom left up to the upper right first. It's just the way I am. You can go the other way too. It's just how I am. I've always done it that way. So you're just very consistent. Keep going. So I'm going to do my first stitch now to see this from here. If I can get this a little bit closer so you can see. It's backward in the screen. But from here, you can see this is the first one. It's filled in, so that means it is a stitch. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 up. So instead of completing one stitch, I'm going to do a series. You go up. Make sure that you leave a small amount of thread on the back. About an inch, like that. Hold it tight with your finger so that it doesn't pull all the way out. And then you go under. This is how I do it, and I do not use a hoop. You go under, you go diagonal, and you go under the thread and straight across in one stitch. I always do the first one first so that I can see what's going on in case I pull it. You pull it so it should be this tautness so that it's not totally stretched. Like it's not, you're not pulling it so that it's pulling against these holes. But it's also not loose at all. Now, once you've done the first one, then you've got to take care of the thread on the back. You never ever make a knot on the back. So you go down through the correct hole, flip it over. See, that was the first stitch that we did. And you'll be able to see which direction to go in and everything. Pull it again so that it's taut, but it's not tight. And then you take this little tail of thread and hold it down so that it's going to be crossed by this new thread. You go over the one hole. It's really hard to see, sorry. So this tail is going to be covered by this thread. It goes over one, push the needle through, flip it over again so you see what you're doing. Pull it tight, but not too tight. Taut, but not tight. And then you do the same thing again. So it's going to go diagonal across that weave and then flip it over. And again, especially if you're using, they have sets that you can clamp your fabric into. Then you can't flip it over like this. It's very inconvenient. The fabric doesn't bend at all, so you can't do that one stitch I was just showing you in the beginning, which is how I do most of my stitching. So that's why I do it freehand without any hoops or anything else. See, I'm going to figure out how to get the camera so in a better position you actually see what I'm doing. So again, make sure that the tail is underneath, down into that hole. Pull it out. It's 1, 2, 3, and there were 4. So same thing, in, under, out, through. Now, that's the 4 that was counted on the pattern. This thread is not going to go anywhere. At this point, this thread will not go anywhere. Going to keep burying that little tail so it's not flopping around. But that thread is locked on. It's not going anywhere at this point. And you do, from this point on, you do the completion of these stitches, which is the second part of the cross stitch. And so I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to go down, and then the cross will be this direction. And that's the pattern that all these stitches I'm going to do this entire time are going to be like that. So for the first couple anyway, I'm going to go underneath it. So you go down in the first hole, bend the fabric, push the needle up through the second hole. Once you've got the needle, let go of the fabric so that it can be held in place. And again, you want it to be taut, not tight. You don't want a stitch that's bent like this and will make the fabric bend. You want to be able to keep the fabric flat like that. And I do check by pushing my finger underneath from the other side so I can see if it's going to lay flat. Do it again. Yes, sometimes it slips out. That's okay. Pull it. Taut but not tight. Now this is the point when I have two left. I want to know where the next direction is to go in. So I am here and I want to skip over. You can't see it. Let me do it like this. I am here. Is it focus me? And I want to skip over here. And then, so there's a line that's white, so that's not stitched at all. And then next to that, there's a line of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going this direction. So instead of going down and up and down and up and ending up with my fabric, with the thread going through the fabric in this hole, I'm trying to go this direction. So I want it to end up in this hole so that it's only one length over before I'm in the correct column again. Try not to have any gaps at all, where you have, if it's at all possible, where you have thread going under. The reason is because you put black thread under this hole, it's going to be visible. If this hole here is not supposed to have this black thread go through it and you have black running underneath, you'll be able to see it and it'll mess up the pattern. So in this case, instead of going across, I'm going to go down. Same thing in the top hole, through the bottom one, exact same thing, hold it tight, and then move it over. So this will go up. Again, these are all in the same place. The bottom stitch always goes like that, and the top stitch always goes like that. So the top stitch goes back the other way, and then under unstitched fabric, over, and hold it there. And then I counted on the pattern. These are my first 4 stitches. These are all white. This is the next one. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, we want the first stitches always go this way. So this one is here. You make it go down to get it up, and then but the direction of the stitch is up because that's the direction you're going. Now from now on, it can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. Oops, make sure it's actually through the hole. 4, 5. However, it's not quite straightforward, and this is why. Because there's 2 white squares, but above them are 2 black squares. And again, I'm trying not to go more than 1 square ever underneath. So we've got 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put this in. That'll be the 4th one. I'm going to skip the 5th one and go underneath and do these 2 top black stitches. Again, bottom left, upper right, 1, 2, and I could actually do the third one that's next to it, and I normally would go into that gray pattern, but because I'm making this video, I'm not going to. So 1, 2, and then back. These ones are vertical stitches as opposed to horizontal. 1, 2. So I'm in the upper right. I'm going to the lower part. But I also have to bury that tail still. So here's what I'm going to do with the tail. It's going up here. I'm going to twist it around like this, which might drive some people crazy. Bury the tail and make it go that way. So this is where it came up over here, and I know that because this, I can see that that's the stitches there. So the tail is buried. Again, this first one is not the direction of the tail, so I don't have to worry about it. I can just go in and out. But this next one, I'm still burying the tail. So I go there under the first stitch. I'm going across, but I've got to make sure that that tail, sorry, did I just hit that, is in there securely. So again, make sure the tail is down, hold it down. See, like that. Put that stitch in, pull it through. Bury the tail on the other side, flip it over. And then I'm going to look at the pattern one more time and see where it's going. Well, this one, I definitely need to get a better setup. So from here, it was 4, and then white, and then 5, and then it sort of steps down and it goes to 4. So same thing. I'll go this direction because I'm trying to move it, and then over, and it needs to go 4, so I'll go up, and then back down. And again, I want it to be at this level, so I'll go down and over, and this is how I do as few stitches as possible. And then up and over. Now, when I'm completely finished, I'll have another little tail like that. And instead of doing a knot, you run the needle underneath the fabric, underneath the stitches that you stitched, just like this, and pull it, and then pull it off the needle so it's buried under the stitching. And that, I would say, concludes the first Stitch with Me, which includes all the Stitching 101, and they will not be in any further videos. But this is the first stitches of my Death by Cross Stitch project.